The rights and freedoms are not unconditional because the government has a duty and responsibility to ensure maintenance of peace and public order and protection of the rights, life, and property of all its citizens. This House therefore resolves that the government should designate and gazette specific areas and streets for demonstrations and picketing with a view to ensuring that individuals enjoy their rights and freedoms as enshrined in the Constitution without infringing on the freedoms and rights of others. That particular motion will be moved by the Honorable Member Simon Kingara, and it is on the designation and gazettement of areas and streets for demonstrations and picketing. The Honorable Member for Laikipia County, Catherine Waruguru, will also move a motion on declaration of cancer as a national disaster and establishment of cancer fund. That aware that cancer causes more deaths than HIV, TB, and malaria combined. Further aware that 30% of cancers are curable if detected early. If you're just joining us, these are live images from the National Assembly, where the Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, the Honorable Moses Chiboya, stepped into the chambers, ready to superintend business before this House this morning. This broadcast is brought to you by the Parliamentary Broadcasting Unit in conjunction with the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation.
Grant that we treat and consider all matters that shall come under our deliberations in so just and faithful a manner as to promote your honor and glory, and to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of our country, and of those whose interests you have committed to our charge. Amen. Order. Members from the Yes, honorable members, from the face value, we do not have the required quorum. So I order the bell to be rung.
A requisite quorum of the House or of a committee of the whole House shall be 50 members. If there is not a quorum present, when the chair is taken at the time appointed for a meeting of the House, immediately after the saying of the prayer, the Speaker shall order the bell be rung for 10 minutes, and if no quorum is present at the expiration of the 10 minutes, the Speaker may direct that the bell be rung for a further 5 minutes, and if there is still no quorum present, the Speaker shall adjourn the House forthwith to the next sitting. That is according to the Standing Orders number 34 on quorum at the commencement of the House. So the quorum bell is being rung, and respective leadership in the House is working to ensure that their members do assemble in the chambers to allow business to commence. A motion on the declaration of cancer as a national disaster and establishment of a cancer fund will be moved by the Honorable Member for Laikipia County, Honorable Catherine Waruguru. The member is concerned that there is a high prevalence of cancer in the country, and hence will be seeking that this House urges the government to declare cancer a national disaster and establish a cancer fund affairs to waive the payment of these fees by job-seeking youth in the country, and further urges the ministry to immediately fast-track implementation of the National Employment Authority Act which requires the establishment and maintenance of integrated and up-to-date database of all persons seeking employment. That particular motion will be moved by the Honorable Member Faith Wairi Mugitao. Quorum has been achieved.
Order, members. Order. Order. The members now can take their seats. We have the required quorum, and therefore we will begin our business. And out of curiosity, I find the left of the speaker today a bit very busy and very curious that Serone is seated in the front bench. I think you are completely assuming the right role. Proceed, Honorable. Let's proceed.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair. Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers. Order number 6, notices of motion. Order number 7, statements. Order number 8, motion. Provision of salary incentives and adequate decent housing for police officers who are deployed to serve in the northern Kenya and other hardship areas.
Now, this is the one by Honorable Omar Maalim. I don't know if he's in the house. Yes, proceed, Honorable Member.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that, acknowledging that the Kenya Police play a very important role in the providing assistance to the public when in need, maintenance of law and order, preservation of peace, protection of life and property, investigation of crimes, collection of intelligence, prevention and detection of crime, apprehension of offenders, enforcement of laws and regulations with which it is charged, among other roles as provided for under Section 24 of the National Police Service Act. Concerned that many police officers across the country, especially those working in northern Kenya and other high-risk and hardship areas, continue to work under very difficult environment, characterized by, among others, inadequate and uninhabitable, deplorable and congested living quarters, insufficient tools for work, and poor salaries and allowances. Further concerned that the difficult working environment for the police officers has been often led to frustration, demotivation, and occupational stress among officers, with many of them exiting the force in search of other jobs. This House urges the National Police Service Commission and the Salaries and Remuneration Commission to provide salary incentives and adequate, decent housing for police officers who are deployed to serve in northern Kenya and other hardship areas. Mr. Speaker, sir, from the onset, I wish to state that the Kenya Police is one of the best trained and professional force in the world. However, they remain the worst remunerated and the worst house in the world. Over the years, the Kenya government has proposed reforms, especially the reforms that were initiated in 2011, which emphasized provision of adequate and decent housing for police officers, improved welfare and salaries. These policy documents have remained on paper. Mr. Speaker, we know that currently a constable earns below 20,000 Kenyan shillings. And that really we cannot say is a salary. I will say is a joke, because police officers are human beings like any other people that need needs, that have children that have to pay for the school fees of those children, that have to feed their parents, and that money cannot cater for even the basic needs of the police officers. Mr. Speaker, If you walk into any police station in those areas, northern Kenya and other hardship areas, or even in many parts of the country, you will see police officers living in a very deplorable housing units, corrugated iron seats, uni-huts, and this has led to serious stress among officers. We have been seeing officers that are committing suicide or killing each other, and this is as a result of the living conditions in those quarters. Mr. Speaker, in northern Kenya, we are having serious security issues because of the terror groups in northeastern Kenya. Officers are often deployed in the worst hardship situation. And as a result of lack of those incentives, the only option they have is to leave the force. Most recently, Mr. Speaker, the police, the Kenya National, him to be corruption-free, and we expect him to serve this country diligently. Mr. Speaker, that is not feasible because as a country, I think we have allowed corruption to thrive because we are not providing the adequate working environment and the right remuneration for police officers. Mr. Speaker, academic levels and skills has not been a priority for people working in the police force. A fortnight ago, on 15th of March, a circular has been issued by the National Police Service Commission requiring that graduate police officers and people and officers that have got disability when in the line of duty should not be given a prior set allowances. And this is causing a lot of jitters in the police force. Mr. Speaker, doctors, teachers, and other professionals are seen picketing or going on strike just because of lack of, fulfillment of their needs. Police officers or armed personnel are not allowed to picket according to the Constitution or to go on a strike to agitate for their rights. It's only through this House, Mr. Speaker, that the rights of these officers who are our brothers, our sons, our fathers, and our sisters, and our mothers can be able to be addressed. Mr. Speaker, if you see progressive countries, what they have is a progressive, happy, and motivated police force. If Kenya is to realize Vision 2030, Mr. Speaker, we must have a motivated police force. Mr. Speaker, a motivated, a secure country, motivated officers will result to a secure nation. It is therefore my prayers that this House urges the National Police Service Commission, the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, to take into account the problems that faces these officers. Mr. Speaker, I will pen off here and say that if we are to progress as a nation, then we must remunerate, we must house decently, and we must provide the tools and logistical and equipment required by our police force. I will therefore wish to request, and I will therefore beg to move and request the member for Turkana East, Honorable Ali, to second. Thank you.
Did you say Turkana East, Honorable Ali. And Turkana East? Okay, he's Honorable Ali. Very good. Let's proceed, Honorable Ali.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me to second this motion. Mr. Speaker, first I wish to thank the people of Turkana East for electing me to represent them in this House. Mr. Speaker, I've been in the National Police Service for 20 years before I joined this House. And it's the people of Turkana East that thought it better for me to come here. They knew the suffering the police officers are getting outside there because police service recruits officers from each constituency. And when these officers die in line of duty, it's our constituents that usually cry. And what we do as politicians always, we always rush there to the burials and say, start condemning the Inspector General of Police. But what we have never done is, or realized, it's not the Inspector General of Police who legislates. It's not the Inspector General of Police who actually controls how much is given to the police, to the National Police Service. Mr. Speaker, if you see how these officers are ousted, I happen to be in charge in a station called Korfarar in Wajir. In Korfarar, officers are staying in tin houses. They call them units. These houses, Mr. Speaker, during daytime you cannot stay there because they are too hot. During nighttime, they are too cold. And they usually at night house snakes and all those animals. One day, Mr. Speaker, when I went to visit the cells where there was a prisoner, I happened to see a prisoner just lying down and there was a snake there. Mr. Speaker, I was scared because I knew the next thing, the police will not say they had not prepared or they had not housed they had not prepared a good cell for these people. They will sack me immediately because they will say, I've put a person there and he has been bitten by a snake. But if you see, these officers do not choose where to go. They are not represented even in the National Police Service Commission. You will see the Inspector General and his deputies are the ones who are representing these police officers there. You find the National Police Service takes all its time concentrating in knowing how a police officer acquired to buy a bicycle. It has never considered how these police officers are living. It has never thought how the children of these officers will go to school. These officers started going to school to get at least degrees for them to get enumerated well. But you find now they are even condemned for that. They are saying if you have a degree, you will not be given that allowance, that extra allowance. How will you motivate these people to go to school? You are telling these people, as the National Police Service, a service that the Constitution had put there at least to defend these officers, at least to see how these officers will stay well. They are saying, if you go to the field, you are shot, you are disabled, you will not be exempted from taxes. And this officer went to the field not because he was going there to protect his property. He was going there to protect the lives of other Kenyans. He was going there to protect the property of all the Kenyans. Sometimes we say police are brutal. But these people are frustrated. That's why you see a lot of many suicide cases in the police force. When a police officer goes to his house You find they are sharing a house. And when he goes there with his frustration, a small quarrel prompts this officer to kill the other officer or kill himself. But if this house wakes up and defends these people, because these people cannot even demonstrate like other people. Like the case of the Judicial Service Commission, they are represented from the bottom. You find the magistrates are represented in the Judicial Service Commission, the High Court judges, the Court of Appeal judges. But you find the cadre of officers that are staying in the hardship areas, like in the Northeastern. They are junior officers. Nobody cares about them. They are not even paid their hardship allowances. They are not even paid their night out allowance when they go outside. These officers trek for kilometers without water. They go to trenches of Sukuta Valley, where even breathing is a problem. All this in the name of defending the Constitution, protecting the lives of people, protecting the property of people, not their own property, not their own property. But above all, we must understand that these are Kenyan citizens, these are our brothers, these are our sisters. And when they die, we all cry. This house has a duty to protect these people. This is the only place that these people can get protection. Because outside there, they follow orders. When you are told to move, you move. When you are told to go to a place, even if you know it's risky, even if you know you might not come back, you just go there because it's an order that you have to go there. Mr. Speaker, I wished to request this House actually to support this motion so that these people, these Kenyans, can get at least their children to go to school, because what they are given cannot even take these children to school. It cannot even sustain themselves. Most of the time they are away from their families because there are no places that they can take their families. They are forced to rent houses outside their station. And you find the house allowance that they are given cannot even rent a house in that particular place. So, Mr. Speaker, with a few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I wish to second. Thank you.
You are seconding, actually. You are
yes.
seconding. Yes, having seconded and having heard from the donkey's own mouth, the horse's own mouth, I proceed to propose the question, which is that acknowledging that the Kenya Police play a very important role in providing assistance to the public when in need, maintenance of law and order, preservation of peace and protection of life and property, investigation of crimes, collection of intelligence, prevention and detection of crime, apprehension of offenders, enforcement of laws and regulations, which is charged among other roles as provided for under Section 24 of the National Police Act, concerned that many police officers across the country, especially those working in northern Kenya and other high-risk and hardship areas, continue to work under difficult environment characterized by, among others, inadequate and inhabitable, deplorable, and congested living quarters, insufficient tools for work, and poor. From my left, I will give Honorable Kubai Iringo, who is actually second on the line here for purposes of balancing. Second, because the person who is first on the list is actually from the left. So I will come back to him shortly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving this opportunity to get the first shot on this motion after the proposer and the seconder. Mr. Speaker, this motion is not new in this parliament. I remember in the last parliament you had a motion which was almost similar to this one, And I don't know if it is so the light of the day. And I pray that as we discuss or we debate this motion, it's not also going to get lost in the archives of those people who should enact or put them into effect. Mr. Speaker, the police force has been the talk of town in this country, positively and negatively in many aspects, Mr. Speaker. And more so because of maybe the way they conducted their business in running their affairs, and equally from when they are recruited up to when they are taken to serve the public in various parts of this country, Mr. Speaker. The force has been bedeviled with a lot of issues of corruption from the word go. Mr. Speaker, anytime there's recruitment of police officers, the whole country runs a light with the brokers running left, right, and center, trying to solicit money from parents who are desperately in need of having their children enlisted in the force. And at the end of the day, you find that many people lose their money. And therefore, once one becomes a police officer, he is a product of corruption from the word go. Even before you go to Giganjo, you are already corrupt because you corrupted your way to become a police officer. And that is why you find that even most of the officers we have in the force, Mr. Speaker, they are not people who are called to the job or who are really willing to go there. It's because they are a thorough relative somewhere who had enough money to get them there. And once you find them, when you find that they are not even doing their work properly, it was not their calling, they were pushed there. More so, Mr. Speaker, if you look at it at another angle, you'll find that these officers, when they go out to work there, they meet their colleagues who have already put up a lot of money in their profession. And they join the trail and the cycle continues. Having said that, Mr. Speaker, the police force is the easiest employer these days because the government is assimilating a lot of youths every year. After every passing out parade, another lot is put in, I think almost 10,000, and therefore, and immediately you go to the force, at least you are employed. That is why everybody is rushing there. People who are even qualified don't want to go there because if you go to a teaching training college, after graduation, you take years before you get employed. If you go to any technical institute or even you go to the university and get a degree, you take years before you get employed. But this is a very easy entrance to employment, and that's why many youths are rushing into it. Having said that, Mr. Speaker, the country should be very careful in handling these youths who go into this force in terms of remuneration, in terms of housing, and even job distribution, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you'll find that a police officer who doesn't have somebody who be senior enough with the force is deployed in Mandera almost indefinitely, or is taken to the worst corners of this country, and you are not rotated to any other place. And you'll find those ones who have got close relatives, they will be brought here maybe in the Nairobi Central Business Police Station, or police stations which are very near their homes, and they live comfortably. But those others who don't know anybody, those who maybe joined the force from poor backgrounds, you are taken to a place where you are vulnerable to diseases, you are vulnerable to, you risk your life because of our suburb, and nobody will ever bother to take you out of there unless you use the money to get out of that place. Therefore, the forces should develop a program whereby if you are stationed in a police in a station which is remote for a year, maybe for 2 or 3 years, you are due for transfer without even requesting it. I have got my constituents who have been languishing in some police stations in Northeastern. For one who has 15 years, he has even forgotten his home. And the family is just wondering when the father will ever come back. And nobody sees that. And there are those who, if you transfer them today, after a week they are back again, because somebody brought them back. Therefore, the disparities and the nepotism which is being experienced in this force is demoralizing most of the officers who are in the force. Mr. Speaker, coming to the motion precisely and what is trying to seek, that we establish good housing, remuneration, and the like. We are saying that about remuneration as we talk it today. But the other week, we heard that those who had already gone to school to improve on their certificates to get a better remuneration, already their salaries have been cut. The other day I was watching the TV and I found that there was one who was paid 161 Kenya shillings as a monthly pay. This person has been in the office for 30 days. He has a family. He himself needs to eat. He has children in school and many other requirements. And they have got even loans or other things. And then you are told this is your salary. How do you expect that officer to work prudently? How do you expect that officer to be somebody sober enough to serve the public? Little provocation to that person, because he has got that leather weapon in his hand, he will just point it at you or himself or in the crowd. We have to be very careful who are those when we are making these decisions. If a police officer sleeps in a unit, like my brother said, at night you can't sleep because it is very cold. During the day you can't stay there because it's very hot. Now, where will you stay? And you are not an amphibian, you are not you are not cold-blooded or warm-blooded. Where do you stay? And how do you work? How do you become a bodyguard of a police officer? Of an MP. How do you become a bodyguard of a CS when you sleep in cold and he sleeps in a very warm blankets and you think that he will be very comfortable protecting you? If danger comes, he will duck and you die. And forget it. Mr. Speaker, these are human beings. We have to take care of them. In my constituency, I've put up several police houses in various police stations and police posts in my constituency. And you find that before the house comes up, the inspector is the one who is rushing to book that house to stay there because it is very good. And even the officer who was working there, and I was putting out for those buildings for those simple constables, they are thrown out and they are taken to the units. That is when they turn against their leaders. Mr. Speaker, it is the high time we looked at this issue very prudently. Imagine somebody passing a law, Mr. Speaker, or proposing or writing a circular that somebody has been maimed during the line of duty. You have been shot, you have been hurt, you are not capable of performing your duties. And then you are saying you won't be paying any allowances, you will be paying taxes, and maybe you might even be retired. That is immoral, that is shameful. Even if you are not as active as you were when you were employed. And unfortunately, you came to this predicament because you were working for this nation. You should be the best person to be taken care of. You should be the last person to be abandoned. Therefore, the police force needs total overhaul. Even the Kavulundi team is not helping this nation. They are messing more than they are doing good to this country. They should sit down and look at this force holistically. Not only for the northeastern people, not for the arid areas, is the police force which should be looked into. The human resource, housing.
Member for Lurambi.
Mr. Speaker, I want to appreciate this motion. In my constituency, Lurambi in Kakamega, I just begin by saying we had an issue where a child was murdered. And that was not the doing of the police. But I saw how the reaction was, and I found myself on the side of the police, when as a politician, naturally, I should be on the side of the people. And police are generally condemned. Every bad thing, the blame comes on the police. Mr. Speaker, our policemen live in deplorable conditions. The policemen and policewomen, they are human beings. They are just like any other Kenyans that deserve a better place, deserve dignity. My security guard that was assigned to me, when I went to visit his house, I found he lives with another family. Him and his wife and children are just literally separated by a curtain. And these are young families. And so you can just imagine the conditions they live in when they want to have, their own wonderful time as family. There's no walls that separate them. Even the animals surely have a better place in the jungle. And so to me, I support this motion fully because we know that in every group of people, we may have a few individuals that are not good people. And therefore, we cannot just in a blanket way condemn the police service and just say the police are not good people because maybe they have thrown tear gas at us at one point or another, and just say that these people don't deserve anything better. In this world and in our country that we live in, if we didn't have policemen and policewomen that serve 24/7, what can we be? And where can our country be? And I think also, Mr. Speaker, one of the reasons why we have so much corruption and the policemen and the policewomen somewhere are picking a little money and are going after the old mamas that are doing the illicit brew businesses is because their pay slip cannot hold and their pay slips cannot sustain. And that's why we see there's a rampant corruption. And they have to do all these acts because they want to make up. They also want to have a life. Mr. Speaker, the policemen and the policewomen that serve this country are equally parents. They have children in school. And when our government talks about free education, we that are members of parliament and we are at home, we realize that it's not actually free education. There is money paid. When you look at the pay slip of a policeman or a policewoman, where are they going to get the money to also put their children in schools so that their kids can also have a future? And that's why I stand on the floor of this honorable house, Mr. Speaker, to say from practical point of view, having looked at how the policemen and policewomen live, also having relatives that are also serving in the police service, that this house needs to support this motion so that we can have our policemen and our policewomen living in good conditions, living in good houses, not only in Northeastern, but I've also seen it in Kakamega, whereby it rains, and it rains in Kakamega. In fact, Mr. Speaker, just on Monday, I was talking to the AP sub-county commander of Kakamega Central, and he told me that his house and the houses of other officers were leaking terrible. It was literally raining in those houses. I also spoke to the county commander of Kakamega County, and he told me he had to spend his own money, literally his own money, to work on a government house that he was going to occupy. Mr. Speaker, when we think that we are the custodians of the people of this country, we speak on their behalf. We are their voice. The police out there are bashed. For some reason, Mr. Speaker, I didn't like them because they were throwing tear gas at me. And being a preacher also, on the other hand, I was tempted to say a bad prayer against them. I was like saying, God, I don't like these people. But when we face reality and we think, look at these people, they live with us. When you raise an alarm at night, look at them. Even when I drive from here to Kakamega at night, and I'm going through Nakuru, Band Forest, Kapsabet, it's very cold in Band Forest. And you find these people are manning the roadblocks at night. You sympathize with them. So, Mr. Speaker, we should just unanimously, as a House, come. Actually, this is like a bailout, because even when I looked at what was coming out, that their allowances were going to be slashed, then I knew we are actually going for trouble. Because when you slash the allowances, you are just simply amplifying corruption. The vice is going to go up, and even we will have other criminal activities because these are people, they have to survive. How are they going to survive when they don't have what they need to survive? I think, honorable members, through Mr. Speaker, we need to come in total support of our policemen and policewomen, and also more money given for trainings, and not just training for formality, where we can also see change through the training. When they continue through their continuous assessments, we have also to see a replica of the same, that we are actually putting in money, and we can see their code of conduct changing. Some of them operate under a lot of duress. Some of them, I meet them on the road, and because, you know, they know me, I'm a church man, they say, Bishop, give us something. If you've gotten some offering in the church, give us something small here. And, you know, usually, you know, being a church man, I don't like giving, I like receiving much. But when you look at their conditions, Mr. Speaker.
Order, Bishop. Have you not read that part of the Bible that says, blessed is he who gives than who receives?
Mr. Speaker, I have read and I preach very much about it. When it's about preaching, I really preach about it. But Mr. Speaker, I know that part that is, which talks about is those that work in the pulpit. They shall eat in the pulpit. Yeah. So, you know, it is a catchy situation. So Dr. Nyikal says he has not heard about it, but it's in the Bible. So, Mr. Speaker, we also have to think about the welfare of others. Instead of a blanket condemnation, let us think on how we can improve on their welfare, how we can improve on their salaries. SRC should not be thinking about cutting down their salary, because globally, do you think about bringing somebody down wage-wise or you take them up? There is a way you can cut cost, but you have to maintain somebody's salary. You can't talk about trending downwards. You have to think about how you maintain or you take it upward. And if you have an issue with the wage bill, then you have to go around it, find a way how you can minimize the wage bill. So, Mr. Speaker, as a House, we are the defenders of the Kenyan people. We are their voices. And when we go out there, obviously, the Kenyan police are not in good books with the citizenry of this country to say, I support this motion.
Thank you, Bishop Kamala, Honorable Bishop Kamala. And you see, you together with a member of Turkana Central, who is also a clergy, you would find time to talk to, you know, Honorable Dr. Nyikal. He says he's not heard that part of the Bible. You might also have to go a little further and tell him that, you see, you do not use an ox with a mouth straddled, you know, so that he can be with you. Now, let's have a honorable member for is Honorable Kitonga. I'm sure also known as Honorable Manzo.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to contribute on this very important motion. Mr. Speaker,
let's see. Did you want, you have your time, but did you want to speak, leader of minority party? Of course, you know you have a preference, so we'll have an opportunity to give you after we go to the right.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that this is a very important motion, and also that all of us in this House, at least each one of us, have a police officer who takes care of our security. Mr. Speaker, I agree with this motion. There has to be a decent housing for police officers. If you go to most police stations, and especially the areas described in this area, you find that the conditions the police officers live are horrible, and in fact, during the rain season, it gets worse. Mr. Speaker, most of the police officers, you know, have taken their career as a calling, and in fact, do a lot to assist other members, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, it is clear that the government has to make provisions, and this House actually makes budgetary allocations to make sure that the interests of police officers are taken care of, right from the training. And in fact, nowadays the force is attracting graduates, Mr. Speaker. In fact, recently a young lady from Makueni, who is a young lawyer, said she was interested in joining the police force, and she thought as a lawyer she will even change it much better or participate, and will be of great help in terms of giving, intelligence collecting, and be able to even create changes from within and make proposals as the amendments we can make as a House into the law. And you can see that is a young person. So I asked her whether she was willing to earn the sort of salary scales which have been given for graduates who joined the force. And therefore encouraged her and wished her one day that she could be the commissioner or the Commissioner General, Inspector General of Police one day, because you could see there are people who go for because they have interest, because they want to serve the nation, and at the same time there are those who are in the force by default because their tall relatives corrupted someone and they found themselves in the police force because there was no other alternative payment. We have also gotten information that the police officers range from standard 7 school leavers to even graduates, and you know there has to be a way of harmonizing the salary scales and the duties depending on one's qualification to make sure that the force is much better and delivers to the country. There has also been instances of insecurity by the police officers, whereby you find there is insecurity in an area, like there were cases in Makueni constituency where the residents accused police officers of laxity. In fact, there were people breaking cars, and one day a car of a police officer was broken into, and that awakening the force to begin to do something. They also, the working of police officers can become better if there is sharing of information from residents, giving information to the police, so that those with influence, they are sent, to Parliament or other parts, so that everyone feels whatever is happening is free and fair, and that the force has reformed. With the coming of the new constitution in 2010, there has been serious developments, and the police force are
now going to help us, because if maybe they are not taken care of, even the corruption in Kenya is due to that poor salary of the police and even the condition they are living in. They are following those small things just because they are not able to sustain themselves. So, Mr. Speaker, it is very important for us to support this motion so that the police officers will be really taken care of. Those small houses they are living in, you cannot even be with your family. Neither you are not able to construct a good house for the family. Then what is the purpose of you being in that job? It will defeat the purpose of somebody. You are working, but you are not able to sustain yourself, neither will you be able to help your family. So I just want to say it is necessary for us to look the way they are working, their working condition, and even what I saw recently. A policeman tried to kill his own son, and even to kill himself. He managed to kill the son, but the policeman survived. It is very important for us to look at those things and try to see how they are at least going to be managed to, at least to be able to take care of their families. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, I support this motion so that our policemen and women will be able to serve the Kenyan people. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. And before I give the next member to contribute, let me recognize in the public gallery, pupils from Nyaga Primary School, from Gatanga, Muranga, Karuri High School, from Kamba, Kiambu, and in the speakers gallery, Santa Hannah Carl Waters Primary School, or is it secondary school, from Ruiru, Kiambu County. Now, of course, the minority leader indicated he wants to speak, but his card is not reflecting. So as he prepares himself, let me give this lady from, it's not reflecting. Okay, then I'll give you shortly after this. Let me give Honorable Mwanyanje Mbeyu, member for Kilifi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support this motion. Mr. Speaker, it's true the police, men and women, will have problems. They don't even have salaries. We call it wages. Salary less than 20,000, Mr. Speaker. These are very important Kenyans, and we cannot work or live without them. These are officers who have families, Mr. Speaker. They have, some of them, more than one wife. They need to take care of their children in school. You'll find some of these officers, Mr. Speaker, go, but Mr. Speaker, this is not true, because they cannot take care of their families themselves. The kind of houses they live in, Mr. Speaker, is pathetic. Mr. Speaker, is from the police forces, police women and men, who have come with such kind of Swahili words, and I quote, kitu kidogo, chai, maji. Mr. Speaker, I fall a victim. One time I was going for a meeting, and at a police checkout point in traffic, a police officer asked for Mheshimiwa Sutuachie maji. And because I had not understood their language, I had water in my car, Mr. Speaker, and I told my bodyguard to give them 1 carton of water. Mr. Speaker, my bodyguard started laughing in the car. I didn't understand, and he was telling Mheshimiwa, you didn't understand the language. It's not water. So I was learning is this kitu kidogo, chai, from the police officers. It's not their fault, Mr. Speaker, they're not contented. Mr. Speaker, we've learned from most cases of the love triangles, Mr. Speaker, and the suicide from the police officers. Their wives are not contented in the houses. These police officers are not found in the homes, and they cannot provide. And that's why some of their wives have to look for other means of survival, Mr. Speaker. And as we pit these officers, Mr. Speaker, let this House, the 12th Parliament, bring change to these officers. Understand some of the MPs here have not even gotten bodyguards. It's not because they cannot find some, but they seem to be a burden, Mr. Speaker. You get a bodyguard who doesn't have a house, who cannot even have food, so you have to give 1,000 one evening, the next day, and I pity some MPs have no bodyguards yet because of the situation of these police officers, because they cannot take home anything. They look like beggars. And Mr. Speaker, I beg this 12th Parliament to bring change into the police officers, women and men, in their lives, in the kind of houses they live in, and not incentives. We need to give them big salaries, Mr. Speaker, from that 17,800 to at least 50 for them to be comfortable taking care of the many Kenyans who need security, who need their services. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
That one, I must confess, he's a little lower in the... But
Thank you.
Of course, you know, we voted and said that they should be given preference. Oh, yes. The leader of minority and the leader of majority. So that is what you voted. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, first I want to register my congratulations and thanks to the Honorable Mar Malim for bringing this motion, which my colleagues have been supporting and hailing as a very important motion. But I want to start by saying that Kenya has been hailed as one of those countries with a very progressive chapter on the Bill of Rights. Mr. Speaker, Chapter 4 of our Constitution, starting from Article 19 all the way to 59, is on the Bill of Rights. But Mr. Speaker, Article 41 that talks about labor relations is a right that we all enjoy as Kenyans, but we must accept that the police force is one, or police service is one of those category of Kenyans who have been denied by operation of Article 24 of the Constitution the full enjoyment of these rights, which includes that they are entitled to reasonable working conditions, that they can form, join, or participate in the activities and programs of a trade union. They can't. They can go on strike. Any Kenyan can go on strike. The police service can't. And many other rights that other Kenyans enjoy. The understanding, therefore, was that there must be a way through which, as a people, we would protect this category of Kenyans who are serving in those disciplined forces where they are not required by law to realize full enjoyment of the basic human rights and the Bill of Rights. Mr. Speaker, I want to say, and I agree with my colleagues, that a lot of things that we see happening with our brothers and sisters who are in the police service, like committing suicide, like police officers killing each other, like when you see the conditions they live in, is actually deplorable and as a consequence of some failure. I remember, Mr. Speaker, in 2008, we embarked on a process that was supposed to bring this country back to normalcy. One of the agenda items was Agenda 4. Among the Agenda 4 items was the reforms in the police service. Even as we discuss this motion, which is restricted to police officers in northern Kenya, but I want to say that the failure to recognize these police officers, the failure to make their lives comfortable, is actually a consequence of the stalled process on police reforms. Mr. Speaker, we created a commission. In fact, the people of Kenya decided to create a fourth arm of government. We were used to three arms of government: the judiciary, legislature, and the executive. But the people of Kenya felt that these three arms of government were not their bosses are so arrogant. I watched one of their bosses speaking in the media, and it's dismissive. He says, we have trained other 10,000 police officers. It doesn't matter if 1,400 resigns. That kind of attitude. How do you expect the police who are watching TV and watching an individual, their boss, speak like that? How do we should even have more graduates? Because we want intelligence also. Police service is not just about carrying a gun and firing and shooting. That is why sometimes they make mistakes. We also need some level of intellect. We need these people to be more intelligent. And if they were put in some grade, earning about 36,000, Mr. Speaker, then you wake up one morning and say that that salary has been wrongly awarded. You are reducing it from 36,000 to 18,000. When you are asked, you see the chairman of the Police Service Commission talking like a very ignorant person, more ignorant than ordinary Kenyan in the street, saying no one's salary has been reduced. And then the police spokesman on the same day in another TV station is saying we have reduced the salary because it was wrongly awarded. Now, between the chairman of the Police Service Commission and the spokesman of the police, who is telling Kenyans the truth? I think this is something that we must stop. And this bad habit actually is brought to this country by SRC. This bad habit of reducing people's salary. And you know, when it affects members of parliament, every Kenyan clap and hail it. Even if you are my enemy, you cannot have your salary reduced. Once you're given that salary, the best that can happen is to maintain it at that point for a period of time to have others be harmonized with your salary. But you cannot give someone a salary and reduce it. Then you get another excuse that there are some people whose salary is being reduced, who are being now subjected to tax, when the law is very clear that if you are disabled, any Kenyan who is disabled, including a member of parliament, is not supposed to be subjected to taxation. Now you start taxing police officers who are disabled because there is some corruption within the system. Now you even start taxing people who are genuinely and physically disabled. Why don't you continue paying as you investigate? Investigation and paying are not mutually exclusive. Sometimes you wonder, you ask yourself, what is wrong with the top leadership of our police service? In fact, the top leadership of the police service needs to be retrained. We need to retrain them. And we expected the Police Service Commission to vet them. They carried out some exercise purporting to be vetting these police officers, but I am not sure whether they did a good job. Mr. Speaker, there was IPOA, which started very well. IPOA started very well, but along the way, I don't know what has hit them. But Mr. Speaker, allow me to say two more things regarding now the specifics of this motion. About those police officers who are serving or deployed in hardship areas and risky areas. It goes without saying that for you to, and by the way, most of the police officers we take to these areas are the most inexperienced. Those who have just come from college are the ones who are taken there, in these places. Sometimes you ask yourself whether we take our boys, our sons and daughters to go and die. Because you take them there with very limited experience. Why don't you take people who are more experienced with these risky areas? But above all, when you take these police officers to these areas, one thing that you must do, you must motivate them. I know you cannot pay life. No one can pay life. But there is need for proper insurance cover, especially for these police officers who are being deployed to these risky areas. We need a separate insurance cover for these officers who are deployed in this area. During the period that they are deployed in these areas, they need clear insurance cover in the event that they lose their lives. Those whom they leave behind, the loved ones, at least can have somewhere somewhere to start. Mr. Speaker, I want to conclude by, again, talking about the benefits that we give to our police officers. We must look at the living conditions. We must look at the medical cover of these police officers. It is important, but I want to conclude by saying that, and asking again the Committee on Security to do two things. Number one, to look into this issue of salaries, the complaints that the police officers have registered. But two, to look at the National Police Service Commission and interrogate it if it is still serving the interests of Kenyans and the interests of the police service. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support the motion.
We shall have Muhammad Ali, member for Nyali. Meanwhile, the Honorable Kathuri Murungi, member for South Imende, you are proposing an amendment. I would like you to prepare your amendment as the Honorable Ali makes his contribution. I will be giving you the next opportunity so that you can make that amendment. You can propose that amendment. The Honorable Ali, the floor is yours.
Mheshimiwa Speaker, shukran sana, na naomba nianze kwa kusema hivi. Naunga mkono swala hili ama hoja hii ya maafisa wa polisi waweze kuangaliwa. Nitaanza labda kwa kusema dunia nzima imewekeza katika usalama wa taifa, lakini hapa nchini Kenya sisi tumewekeza katika uhalifu wa kujitakia, kwa sababu hatufuatilii utaratibu na kanuni zinazohitajika kuhakikisha kwamba usalama wa taifa unapatikana. Polisi ni mwananchi wa Kenya na raia wa kawaida kama Mkenya mwingine, na wanahitaji kuangaliwa vilivyo ili waweze kutulinda sisi wa Kenya. Mheshimiwa Spika, maafisa wale wote waliopigana pale katika jumba la Westgate bado wana makovu ya upweke, bado hawajalipwa, bado wanatembea na machungu kwa sababu hawezi fikia hospitali. Leo afisa amepigwa risasi akipambana na mhalifu, anaambiwa ajipeleke katika hospitali ya Kenyatta. Hapewi heshima ya afisa wa polisi. Ni kwa sababu sisi hatutaki kutunga hizi sheria. Lau kama tungelitunga sheria za kuleta mambo ya anasa duniani, tungelikuwa wa kwanza kuzipitisha haraka haraka. Lakini sheria ambazo zinahusu maisha ya watu hawa hatufanyi. Mheshimiwa Spika, naomba tuweke mfano na hawa wanaotulinda. Naomba tuwajengee mahali ambao watakaa kwenye kivuli. Mvua ikinyesha wanaweza jistiri mahali wakitusubiri. Ni lazima tutoe mfano kwa watu hawa. Leo wafisadi wakubwa na wabakaji wa demokrasia ni sisi wabunge, mawaziri na viongozi wengine wakubwa. Lakini leo afisa wa polisi akishikwa kwenye trafiki amechukua shilingi 200, inakuwa ni habari ya dunia. Tunaacha wale walioiba mamilioni ya pesa, waliobeba na gunia wakabeba, waliobeba na mabegi wakabeba, lakini afisa wa polisi 200 tu inakuwa ni taarifa za dunia. Kuna sababu ya yeye kuchukua shilingi 200. Kwa sababu wewe huwezi ishi Kenya ya sasa na mshahara wa shilingi 15,000 au 21 na una bibi na watoto na unataka wapate maisha kama Wakenya wengine. Mheshimiwa Spika, hili ni jambo ambalo tunafaa tulifikirie zaidi, tulipasishe kwa haraka bila ya wasiwasi yote. Marupurupu, kuna kitu wanaita harambee sako. Hii si sako ya maafisa wa polisi. Hii ni sako ya matapeli. Kwa sababu maafisa wa polisi wanaekeza pale, lakini hizo pesa zinakuwa ni za kushurutishwa, ni pesa ambazo zinakuwa zinatumiwa na baadhi ya maafisa wakuu wa polisi wanaowanyanyasa maafisa wadogo wa polisi. Marupurupu, hardship allowance, wakienda katika sehemu hizi mbalimbali hatari kwa usalama, hawapati hizi pesa. Afisa atapelekwa sehemu kama Mandera, atapelekwa kama Kainuk kule Turkana, na zile pesa ambazo wanafaa lipo kwa siku hawezi kupewa kwa sababu inaingia katika mfuko wa afisa moja ambaye anajiona yeye ndio simba katika maafisa wengine. Mheshimiwa Spika, naomba kupendekeza mswada huu uweze kupitishwa. Angalau nina furaha kama Mkenya kwa sababu tumeweza kufika kiwango ya dunia ya afisa mmoja kwa Wakenya 400 ikilinganishwa na miaka ya nyuma ambayo hatukuwa tumeweza kufika kiwango hiki. Kwa hivi sasa ambapo tunazungumza, Kenya nzima ina maafisa 80,000, 80,000 ambao wanalinda Wakenya milioni 45. Kuwapa motisha ni kuhakikisha kwamba wanapata mshahara ya kutosha ili waweze kujimudu wao na familia yao, ili waweze kutuhudumia sisi wa Kenya. Mvua inanyesha kila siku, jua ni kali, lakini ukipita katika mabarabara yetu utapata maafisa wamesimama kwa mvua. Hata kitengo cha usalama hakiwezi kupatia hawa watu mwavuli. Kitengo cha usalama haiwezi patia hawa watu majaketi ya kuzuia baridi. Ni laana. Ni jambo la kuaibisha. Ni jambo la kusikitisha, Mheshimiwa Spika. Kwa hivyo mimi nasimama na kuliunga mkono na kusema wakati umefika wa bunge hili la 12 kuhakikisha ya kwamba mswada huu umepita na maafisa wa polisi wamefunga. Timu ya Kavulundi isiwe tu ni timu ya vyombo vya habari, iwe ni timu ya kuhakikisha kwamba hawa watu wamesikizwa. Hawa watu wanalipwa ipasavyo. Hawa watu ni binadamu, hawana bima. Hawa watu lazima washughulikiwe ipasavyo.
Officer was sharing his frustration with me that he is sharing a tin shack, those rowdy things they are built, with a man who is married. And you know, Mr. Speaker, these people don't go to work together. Either one must leave the house and the other one is left. And Mr. Speaker, you can also reason what happens when these guys are left, because you know, a man and I don't want to go into the depth of these issues, but Mr. Speaker, sincerely speaking, if this amendment can be made this way, I think it will be a good thing to do, Honorable Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Kathuri, I have not been able to pick out the exact words that you wish to leave out of this. Can you be a little clearer?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, what I was explaining is that the issue of housing for police officers.
Just the words you would like to be left out, not explanation. Explanation you have made quite well. Yes. But the words you want to leave out of the text.
It is the second line, this motion, let us start where the House urges the National Police. The House urges the National Police Service Commission and the Salaries and Remuneration Commission to provide salary incentives and adequate decent housing for police officers. We stop at there, period. We
So
don't
the ones
go
you
to the
propose to leave,
yeah? Sorry, Mr. Speaker.
the ones you propose to leave out,
Who are deployed, from who are deployed to serve in northern Kenya and other handship areas.
very well.
We
Now it
stop
is clear.
at police officers.
Now it is clear.
Thank you.
Honorable members, I propose the question that the motion be amended as proposed by the Honorable Kathure to read that acknowledging that the Kenya Police play a very important role in providing assistance to the public when in need, maintenance of law and order, preservation of peace, protection of life and property, investigation of crimes, collection of criminal intelligence, prevention and deduction of crime, apprehension of offenders, enforcement of laws and regulations with which it is charged, among other roles as provided for under Section 24 of the National Police Service Act, concerned that many police officers across the country, especially those working in northern Kenya and other high-risk and hardship areas, continue to work under very difficult environment characterized by, among others, inadequate and inhabitable, deplorable and congested living quarters, insufficient tools for work, and poor salaries and allowances. Further concerned that the difficult working environment for the police officers has been often led to frustrations, demotivation, and occupational stress among officers, with many of them exiting the force in search of other jobs. This House urges the National Police Service Commission and the Salaries and Remuneration Commission to provide salary incentives and adequate, decent housing